Let's start with the basics. You've probably heard the word tariff tossed around in the news, especially when countries are having disagreements about trade. But what does it actually mean, and why does it matter so much? A tariff is essentially a tax that a government places on goods coming into the country from abroad. Think of it as a kind of toll that foreign products have to pay to cross the border and enter the local market. For example, if a British company wants to sell its teapots in America, the US government might slap a tariff on those teapots. This means the price goes up for American shoppers, making that British teapot more expensive than it would be otherwise. The result? Imported goods become less competitive compared to products made locally. That's the whole point. Tariffs are designed to give an advantage to domestic businesses by making foreign alternatives costlier. The idea is to nudge consumers toward buying homegrown products, supporting local jobs and industries. When foreign goods cost more, people are more likely to pick something made in their own country. Tariffs can also be used as a bargaining chip in international trade negotiations. By threatening or imposing tariffs, a country can try to persuade others to change their trade policies or open up their markets. In fact, tariffs have been a part of American economic policy since the earliest days of the country. They were once a major source of government revenue and a way to protect young industries from foreign competition. Traditionally, Congress had the exclusive power to set these taxes, making sure there were checks and balances in place. This way, no single person could make sweeping decisions about the nation's trade policy. But over time, Congress started giving the president more flexibility, especially in times of crisis or when quick action was needed. This shift allowed the executive branch to respond rapidly to economic threats or emergencies. Now the big debate is about what actually counts as an emergency. Should the president have the power to impose tariffs whenever they see fit, or should there be stricter limits? This is the drama playing out in today's headlines. Every time you hear about new tariffs or trade wars, it's really a story about who gets to make the rules, and how those rules affect everyone. The question at the heart of it all: can the president use emergency powers to make sweeping changes to the economy, or should Congress step in to set boundaries? Imagine giving your flatmate your credit card for emergencies, only to come home and find they've redecorated the entire apartment. That's the kind of power struggle happening in Washington right now. So as Americans watch the news and wonder what's next, the real question is, who should have the final say over tariffs? And what does that mean for our wallets, our jobs, and the future of the economy? Fast forward to 2025. The world looks different, and the United States is at the center of a global economic storm. The air is thick with anticipation as a new era of trade policy begins to unfold. President Trump, now in his second term, wasted no time in shaking up the global trading system. His bold approach sent shockwaves through international markets and left world leaders scrambling to respond. The administration announced sweeping tariffs, ranging from 10% to a staggering 50%, on nearly all imports entering the country. These tariffs were not limited to a handful of products or countries. They covered almost everything, from electronics and cars to clothing and food. The impact was immediate. American consumers saw prices rise on everyday goods, while businesses struggled to adapt to the new costs. Some industries cheered the protection, but others worried about retaliation and supply chain chaos. This wasn't a targeted strike at a single nation or sector. It was a broad economic strategy designed to reshape America's role in the world economy. The administration argued that such drastic action was necessary to protect American jobs and industries. The legal justification for this sweeping move was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. This law, originally intended for national security crises, gave the president broad authority to regulate economic transactions during emergencies. Declaring a national emergency, Trump introduced two main types of tariffs: trafficking tariffs and reciprocal tariffs. The announcement was made with great fanfare, signaling a new era of aggressive economic policy. Trafficking tariffs specifically targeted China, Mexico, and Canada, accusing them of failing to stop the flow of fentanyl and other illicit drugs into the United States. The administration argued that these countries were not doing enough to address the crisis, and tariffs were a way to force their hand. Reciprocal tariffs, on the other hand, were aimed at addressing the persistent U.S. trade deficit. The idea was simple. If another country imposed high tariffs on American goods, the U.S. would match them, dollar for dollar. The strategy was based on the controversial idea that the president could act alone, bypassing Congress entirely. This raised immediate questions about the balance of power in Washington. The National Emergency Declaration was the linchpin, allowing Trump to impose what amounted to one of the largest tax increases in U.S. history, without a single vote from Congress. The move sparked protests and fierce debate across the country. This set the stage for a dramatic constitutional showdown over who truly controls the nation's purse strings, the president or Congress. Legal challenges mounted quickly, with opponents arguing that such sweeping power was never intended. It was a radical departure from decades of U.S. trade policy, which had long favored open markets and international cooperation. Now the rules were being rewritten in real time. The administration insisted that IEPA gave Trump all the authority he needed to act decisively, even in the face of congressional opposition. This unprecedented move sparked a fierce legal battle over the limits of presidential power, with the outcome poised to shape the future of American governance and global trade for years to come. Imposing tariffs on nearly everything has immediate, messy effects. The moment new tariffs are announced, businesses across the country scramble to figure out what it means for them. Suddenly, the cost of doing business changes overnight, and companies are forced to make tough decisions. Some industries cheer, while others brace for impact, knowing their bottom line is about to take a hit. Some American companies saw tariffs as a lifeline, like a steel mill in Pennsylvania. For these workers, tariffs offered hope, maybe even a future where their jobs would be secure again. The steel industry, long battered by foreign competition, suddenly had a fighting chance to compete on a more level playing field. The goal was to bring manufacturing back to America, benefiting a few industries short-term. Factories that had been quiet for years started humming again, and Made in America labels became a point of pride. For a brief moment, it seemed like the old days of American manufacturing might return. However, the list of losers was longer and consequences severe. Many small businesses, already operating on thin margins, found themselves squeezed by higher costs. Some couldn't keep up, leading to layoffs, shuttered storefronts, and empty factory floors. America imports a lot, from electronics to clothes. Everyday items that people rely on, smartphones, laptops, shoes, and even basic household goods, are often made overseas. Tariffs meant these products suddenly cost more, and those costs were passed on to consumers. Companies like Learning Resources faced massive tariff bills, threatening their survival. For businesses that import parts or finished goods, the new expenses were overwhelming. Some had to raise prices, others cut staff, and a few faced the real possibility of closing their doors for good. The pain rippled through the economy, raising costs for American-made products. Even companies that sourced materials domestically felt the squeeze, as their supply chains were tangled up in the global web of trade. Higher prices became the new normal. Inflation hit, making everything more expensive for families. From groceries to gas, the average American household felt the pinch. Budgets tightened, and families had to make tough choices about what they could afford. Other countries retaliated, slapping tariffs on American goods. Trade partners responded quickly, targeting American exports like soybeans, cars, and whiskey. The global trade war escalated and American businesses found themselves caught in the crossfire. This created a vicious cycle, hurting both importers and exporters. As tariffs piled up on both sides, uncertainty grew. Companies hesitated to invest, and some markets dried up entirely, leaving goods stranded at ports. The policy designed to help America caused widespread financial pain. While a few industries saw short-term gains, the broader economy struggled with higher prices, lost jobs, and a sense of instability that lingered long after the headlines faded. Businesses hit by tariffs didn't just complain, they sued. A wave of lawsuits argued the president overstepped his authority. 19 plaintiffs, including businesses and states, challenged the administration. They claimed the Constitution gives Congress the power to tax, not the president. Federal judges consistently ruled against the administration. The courts focused on whether a president can impose tariffs of unlimited duration. The U.S. Court of Appeals upheld the decisions, citing the major questions doctrine. The ruling set a boundary on presidential power, sending the case to the Supreme Court. Facing defeats, the Trump administration took its fight to the Supreme Court. They argued the IEEPA gives broad authority during emergencies. The administration claimed tariffs were a valid tool for regulating importation. They pushed back against the major questions doctrine, saying it didn't apply to foreign affairs. The decision to impose tariffs was framed as a foreign policy choice. The administration argued Congress should change the law if they disagreed. They contended that regulating imports naturally includes taxing them. The case was about executive strength and constitutional authority. The administration warned a ruling against them would weaken the presidency. Businesses and states argued the tariffs were financially devastating. They presented evidence of crippling costs, like Learning Resources' $100 million tariff bill. The challengers argued the IEPA wasn't meant for a universal tax overhaul. They claimed the law was for targeted sanctions, not a permanent tax on imports. The absence of the word tariff in the IEPA was crucial to their argument. They accused the administration of bypassing the democratic process. The case was about preserving the constitutional order. They warned a ruling for the administration would allow presidents to impose taxes without Congress. The challengers argued this was about maintaining Congress's power to make laws. The Supreme Court delivered its decision, ruling against the Trump administration. The court found the president exceeded authority under the IEPA. The majority opinion leaned on the major questions doctrine. The decision to levy tariffs required clear congressional authorization. The court found no such authorization in the IEPA. The ruling rejected the administration's broad interpretation of presidential power. The court emphasized the power to tax belongs to Congress. The decision invalidated the 2025 tariffs, a victory for challengers. The ruling focused on who has the power to make trade policy. The decision reaffirmed the separation of powers. The president cannot act alone on such significant matters. The Supreme Court's decision reshaped power dynamics in Washington. It closed a loophole, clarifying national emergencies can't grant unlimited economic authority. Future presidents must work with Congress for major trade actions. The ruling reaffirms Congress's constitutional role in trade policy. It forces Congress to take ownership of trade decisions. The decision impacts how economic policy is made, requiring legislative consensus. The ruling may embolden courts to scrutinize executive actions more closely. It reinforces the judiciary's role in maintaining constitutional balance. No branch has absolute power in the American system. The Supreme Court's decision will reshape America's future. The rollback of 2025 tariffs means lower prices for imported goods. Businesses relying on global supply chains can now recover. The ruling shifts focus to Congress for future trade policy. Intense public debate and lobbying will shape trade decisions. The decision introduces stability in U.S. trade policy. It signals more predictable rules for international partners. The ruling is a lesson in American civics, clarifying power boundaries. It ensures the power to tax remains with Congress. The decision will echo for decades, shaping the balance of power. It impacts not just prices, but the structure of American democracy.